Yeah. And just when you talk about like wounding and the areas that we struggle, I had a good career, but it was a very challenging one because
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not in the sense that, I never deployed. I was never in a combat zone per se. And, I have my own reservations about that. But, I was instrumental during COVID. I experienced military life in a way in which like every day was like a challenge to my very being
Hmm.
to push me to make me realize things. But of course, I had a lot of ego as well. So I chose not to acknowledge them. And what I didn't realize was that this is what was really wounding me as a person. So much so to the point where, like after I left, I struggled mentally. I remember having like moments where I genuinely felt as though I was, again, don't like to use the term loosely, but I genuinely believe I was depressed. Very low energy, didn't want to get out of bed, got to the point where I was just like continuously getting in trouble for like really silly things, like turning up to parades late, missing details because like in my mind, I was so fogged and so veiled. I also got injured during training because I'm quite a fit guy, like normally. And so I got injured like properly for the first time. And that just completely sapped my whole like I guess like ability to transmute that energy, because that's also what fitness is. So I'm a massive advocate for it because all that pent up energy was just like, it was just here. It was just sitting. It was festering. And as a result, the byproduct of that was I just became this very like lethargic, like just didn't give a shit, got very low, and my vibration started to attract more and more of that. But then I became a victim to circumstance. That didn't stop me from actually having a pretty good career and having the reinforced beliefs that, you're a good medic, good with people, etc. Because innately that's who I am, like a healer, right? And those are aspects of myself that were separate, right? Anyways, when I left the army, the pandemic hit, and I won't go into too much detail with what happened there, but throughout that time period, I went through a very, like, they call it like the dark phase.
Hmm.
Very dark phase. I went from being like in a in a state of existence where everything was governed by law, order, routine. And even though I struggled with it at times, at least I knew. At least I knew, like, okay, 0700, you're up. 0800 is first parade. Work detail until 12. Lunch from 12 till 1. Muster parade at half 1. Work until 5. Knock off. I had a routine. But then I went from literally having that routine to nothing at all. And, I find myself like gaming until like the early hours of the morning. It's actually kind of funny, right? It's funny how the psyche, the subconscious mind, tells you what you are craving. Because I used to play GTA 5 role playing servers, right? If you're like familiar with that, like the 5M servers, where you basically create characters that take on the roles of like the non-playable characters. And I had two characters specifically. One was an EMT medic, like doing all like the paramedic stuff and interacting with other players, just basically helping out, healing and
That's
all
advanced.
that stuff. The other guy was like an LSPD police, like SWAT officer, doing all like the Rambo stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was like, sorry?
Wild man-esque.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, it may sound a bit lame or whatever, but
No, no.
I realized in hindsight, like that's what I was craving. I was craving like that order, the elements that I believed made me who I was. Because I mean, I was a medic in the army, right? And those are two aspects that were now split. And I was trying to like find a way to reconnect with that, but it was very detrimental because again, the server only came to life at like 11 at night because they're in America. So I'd spend like literally the entire night until the early hours of the morning just playing on these characters. So much so to the point where I got so invested, I would go to sleep, I'd wake up and genuinely feel like I had to go and clock in for my shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. And then like the spiral like descended into, like chronic porn usage. I'm happy to like speak openly about this, because I feel like a lot of guys need to also be able to vocalize these things in order to heal. But yeah, like porn addiction, binge watching Netflix. I let myself go. For the first time ever, I've never been like fat, but I was like skinny fat. I just let myself go, stop going to the gym, was just eating crap. Like, and I think that's also where I started to feel like maybe I didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
I literally have thoughts. I literally have thoughts was like, okay, well, I'm driving. What if, oh, here's a Tesco lorry pulling out. What if I just floored it to 80 and just yanked the wheel left? It's like, it got that specific, right? And then I was like, okay, no, something's not right. Like, something's got to give. And then, sorry, I'm kind of like just like giving like my backstory here, but there's a point to it. There's a point, I promise. That's where I guess like I saw like the one positive benefit to just doom scrolling on TikTok, because that's what I was doing as well. I found a guy called named Anthony Pashon. We're actually mates now. He was showcasing himself doing the 75 Hard program by Andy Frisella. And I just like fell in love with this program because it just like emulated military life, right? Very regimented, very structured. If you fail any of the criteria, you start from day one. You have to do this for 75 days, right? And so I attempted it and I failed. Then I attempted it the second time, got to about like day 60 something. I think it was like day 64. And like a moron, one of the criteria is you have to take a progress picture every single day. I was just destroyed, man. But then, yeah, like an idiot, I didn't take the progress picture. I was like, shit. Yeah, I was gutted. I was like recording this on Instagram and everything, and people were like, "Oh, you're doing so well. What happened, bro?" I was like, "Yeah, forgot to take my progress picture."
Damn.
But then, third time, this is also when I started to step into the creator role and like get more into like, videography, content creation, all that stuff. I did it. I did it for the first time because I was keeping myself accountable by making an Instagram reel every single day without fail. There's some days where I'd be like my girlfriend's house.
Really good.
And yeah, dude, I'd literally be like hanging out with her and I was like, I haven't made a reel yet. And at the time I didn't have my laptop. So I had to come back here. I'd be like driving home at like 2 a.m, across London to get that reel out. Cause like, no, I've made that promise to myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's where a big turning point kind of came around for me. It was like, oh, so you actually can keep promises to yourself. Because my narrative was, well, you never keep the promises to yourself. Like, you never keep the promises to yourself. Therefore, you're a good for nothing loser. Yeah, you might be a good medic, but then what are you outside of that? And it's like, I realized like, shit, this is how these behaviors were manifesting into my 3D. Because I would literally find anything that I could, even if it meant subscribing to a video game, to latch on to that state of thinking, that paradigm. And then once I started to do something to break the shift, I feel like this is where everybody, like even like I say everybody, but then I also would say specifically men nowadays, every man goes through a moment in his life where he will question his own mortality. He will question his meaning on earth. He will go through a dark space where nothing makes sense. But then something will come to the fore in the presenting itself as like a creative skill, an idea, seeing like a program that just resonates with the soul. Or you make that connection, that soul connection. You know what I mean? I call that an inflection point, right? Because that now allows you to hit that point and be like, right, I either commit to this thing and see where it goes. I don't know anything. Like I'm going in completely blind, but I'm going to see what I'm made of. Or I stay here, I orbit around that point, and then you'll have to just basically navigate that same trajectory until another inflection point comes. If you're lucky. Because a lot of people get so caught up in the veil, and then they're in permanent dark mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like essentially my dark phase. And then a lot of light and good came from that, because from the videography and the editing, that's why I
before we get
became
onto that,
a video editor.
before we get onto the good bit, I just want to go over some things on the dark phase, because just so that I don't
Yeah,
forget.
go ahead.
So I love that idea of the inflection point. I think that's really interesting. There are, in recent years, we've had this sort of societal transgression against what it is to be a man, and sort of what it is to have like a purpose and a meaning, and it's been bastardized, and it's been completely and utterly distorted in a negative manner. And the whole point, and it's very incredibly wrong and amoral, but the whole point of what you've just said, I don't know if it is exclusively for the masculine drive, which isn't just for men, it's for anybody, because, obviously you're more aware than probably I am, the masculine and feminine sort of dichotomy of life. The masculine drive is to find a point of purpose, and it is to bring meaning to yourself and to those around you. And it is exceptionally vital for the individual, and it's also exceptionally vital for the society. It's how the society benefits, because the whole point is that you spread those fruits with the people around you, and you bring everyone up. And there are recounts of men who were in like mental hospitals during World War II, who literally just got out of bed and went and drove ambulances and things like that during the war, and which is phenomenal. So a lot of, not really necessary, it's another tangent, but a lot of people will talk about the difference in therapy between men and women, and how men actually they don't need therapy as such in the sort of traditional sense. They need to feel like they're imbued with a sense of meaning, and that is their therapy. And I always think sport is therapy for men, because I think sport is therapy for men, and I think television and drama is therapy for women. And I think it's something, I don't know, I just have this idea, and obviously I'm generalizing, but I'm not going to emphasize that idea too much, because I think there is some truth to it. There's something about being exposed to something that allows you to sort of separate yourself out and watch people channel their own internal sort of life events and project it onto sport or onto the television that they're watching. It's a different, I don't know, I haven't quite fully formed the idea. But anyway, going back to just one little thing I thought I wanted to say is, you should definitely, because obviously Tom and men's mental health, get someone on the podcast who's like a corn expert, in sense of like helping men overcome corn addiction, because I feel like that would be something that would be really. I had a guy on who was pretty decent, but there must be loads of them, and Tom could get in contact with someone. So that just another little thing that I thought would be interesting if you're interested in telling
Yeah,
Tom.
sure. Keep that noted, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to sort of go back to the beginning of what you said, which is, what was it about? When did the sort of depression kick off during not depression, but the sense of feeling low and feeling down, for sort of lack of better terms? What do you think it was? Where did that originate? Because I didn't quite get that bit when you were talking. Did that only occur after you left the army, or did that start during it?
No, so from the time that I was a little boy, so I yeah, fuck it, we'll go deep. So I had it's much less significant now. I had a very deep father wound. Mom and dad divorced when I was 2 years old. They have their reasons, but a large reason of why I ended up feeling the way I did was because my narrative was, all I wanted to do was spend time with my dad. Even when I was growing up here in the UK, and he's got a successful business and everything like that. He remarried and whatever, and they would go on their own trips and everything like that. That's fine. But whenever we would spend time, I always felt like I was being like almost like conscripted into the war that he was still fighting. And that made me feel very insecure in my, the war was just like, oh, you know, your mother left and okay, I took you around away and like, you know, she's bad, we are good, come back to us, kind of like switch over from the dark side to the Jedi, right? But yeah, without going into like the gory details of that, I want to give you the depth, which was basically, now in hindsight, I can see, okay, that's what was called a father wound, because there's also the absence of a father. I mean, yes and no, because I also have my stepdad here who I have a fantastic relationship with. But at the core of it is like, from those experiences, I started to create a belief within myself that I needed to be this like iron fortress of a human being. So if there was anything that like was even remotely hinted that I could be a little bit flawed, I like immediately rejected it with such prejudice. But the problem is, what you give attention to manifests. And so that's when I started to like essentially self-sabotage, right? And I would like freak out, like fully just be like, what kind of a man am I and all this stuff. And that just gave, again, that's when it would give rise to like the depressive thoughts, because I would always do tasks like half fulfilled. I would start turning up late to like events and, things, right? I mean, I didn't do it all the time, don't get me wrong. But it was just whenever those moments had, it then started to anchor that belief of, yeah, see, you're useless. Yeah, see, can't do shit. Yeah, see? And so that's when I started to feel like, yeah, I mean, you tell yourself something enough times, it becomes a narrative. And then that narrative then shifts your paradigm. And then that paradigm then sort of governs the way in which you respond or react. And I started to feel like really low. I started to feel really like unconfident within myself, even though despite other people saying, well, you know what you're doing. You're actually very switched on. Like what? Like what? And I used to just kind of like not believe it, because I just felt like, well, they're just saying that because they want me to feel better, or they're just saying that, there's always an excuse when you're in victim mode, always an excuse. You could literally win the lottery and everyone would be like, oh my God, we're so happy for you. And you just create some excuse to just psych yourself out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main reason that sort of took me there. I would explore absolutely everything, but then we'd be here for like 6 hours. But, that was like the main thing, right? It was just like this limiting belief that came from the fact that I just felt as though I wasn't worthy enough for my dad. Felt like I had to almost be like a double agent in the relationship that I had between my mother and my father. And that then began to like sort of manifest within me. So I was literally like my own double agent. I would do something really good and empower myself, and then immediately seek to sabotage it, because I was like, nah, this can't be real. Dreams only happen to people who are successful and cool, and not you. You're not worthy. So yeah, it's all well and good. You managed to like perform that OSCE and lead that medical exercise perfectly. But we now need to tip the scales back. So guess what? You're going to be late for muster parade. You're going to get pulled up or disciplined or whatever it is, because you don't get to be consistently good. That's what the narrative was. And that's what led me down that mental decline.
Yeah. I was speaking to a girl I was speaking to a girl on here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about OCD, and she was saying how OCD completely sort of completely constricted her life to the point of, OCD is a really, really awful disease, actually.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
I used to have it.
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, I think that makes sense. I think, and I did as well growing up, to be fair. Not in there's sort of two forms of OCD. There's primarily the contamination type, which is, or the ritualistic type. So turning on lights 50 times, becoming literally, it's an external manifestation of restrictions that just keep growing and growing and growing until some people end up in awful positions. And then the other type is literally. And then the other type is more mental, and it's internal dialogue. And just from what you were talking, it sounds a bit like that. And it is like the way I overcame my sort of obsessive thoughts was I had to put a name on the voice in my head. I had to like sort of create a character, and I had to, it sounds quite sort of juvenile, but actually it really worked. And I just used to go, here's such and such, he's piping up again. And because what's so awful is, obviously, as you're well aware, every time you feed the sort of the sensation that you get from, maybe this isn't quite relevant to you, but someone with OCD, the sensation that they get when they complete a task, that sense of relief is such an addictive feeling, but it just compounds the issue. Obviously, I'm not saying anything new. This isn't new ground, but it just makes the thing worse, and then it makes the then the feeling that you get if you don't do something grows, but so does the feeling, the positive emotion that you feel after you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you were just getting in this spiral where this voice, this voice in your head, this little devil thing sat on your shoulder, was just sort of whispering things to you all the time, and it was just, and I completely get it, and it's absolutely awful. And the just before we go back to you, the girl I was speaking to said the way that she overcame it was she had to be courageous, and she had to just sort of sit with it and go, I'm not going to give in. I don't like using the term give in, but you know what I mean. I'm not going to go with what it is you want me to go. I'm just going to challenge it. So, I mean, to be fair, you literally just did say that you used to have OCD. Can you align with that sort of devil voice that was just
100%. I mean, even to the point where I like gave it a name. So mine was Travis.
Travis?
Like
Nice.
Travis. Yeah, it's Travis. And the funny story, I'll give you the quick TLDR.
On the trip.
Yeah, no,
Trevor,
not quite. It's just Travis. Yeah, that's Trevor, but no, Travis. So Travis came from when I was in school. Actually, I was in year 6.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind my name is a Indian name. It's very hard for people, especially when you look at the spelling. People over here like lose their minds. They're like, "What? Sravan, Sravan." They call me all sorts of stuff.
Literally.
My peer group, no, bro, literally. And you actually want to know something really quickly? Just a quick sort of like sidestep.
Yes.
Someone used to call me Scriven, like Scriven. How?
Yeah,
right?
That is a bit too far.
The funny thing is, it's a bit of a piss take, right?
Completely.
I'm a big believer of like names mean things, right? Names are part of identity. So if you don't know someone's name, like I would deliberately take time to learn someone's name, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it's easier with like the Anglo English names, but then if someone's got like an Italian name and there's like a little bit of like a like a inflection in the pronunciation or whatever, I will make sure I learn that.
Yes.
But anyways, the whole Scriven thing, it's hilarious because I connected with a guy from Dan Coe's community in Cortex. His name is Christo Scriven. And he was like, that's wild. Like how, that's become a thing. It's like the name that people falsely called you is literally my last name. I was just like lol. But going back to the whole like Travis thing. So Travis was the name that my friends gave me. And a big part of like, I guess my inner shame was because I got so embarrassed about my name. I also went through this phase of like wanting to like renounce my identity, and like, deny the fact that I had like Indian heritage. And I was just a bit stupid, not gonna lie. But then I was like, no, just call me Travis. My name's Travis. And so far to the point where I even had my name changed by deed poll. I had it included into my name. So Sravan Travis Alopi. And then I just kind of became like my name, my moniker. But then as I started to become more and more myself again, or actually rediscover, and I've started to go by this name again, my birth name, and I've since then removed Travis. What I realized was
Travis.
the manifestation. Yeah, Travis, right? But the thing is, Travis was the manifestation of all the repression, all the depression, all the angst, the hate, the self-loathing. Travis was like the alter ego, essentially, who was also like the boisterous, like army lad.
Yes.
I was never that guy. That's not who I was.
No.
But it's I mean, look at me. Do I look like the type of guys like, lads, get the pints in,
No.
all that stuff? That's not who I am at all.
No.
And I even had my mother and a few people. Travis is a fucking weapon. Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse my French. I don't know,
No, it's all good.
but yeah, he's an absolute weapon, right? And I was like, okay, you know what? It's time for Travis to go, because that's never who I was. It's not who I want to be, and that's not the vibration that I want to be vibrating at. And since then, I've done a lot of the inner work, a lot of work to understand myself,